First of all, he wouldn't do it. And second of all, we're not going to let him do anything where there's a conflict of interest.
Welcome back. President Trump has left the nation with the impression that he will police and prevent Elon Musk from getting involved in anything that would constitute a conflict of interest. Musk, of course, is exerting tremendous influence over many federal agencies. And this has raised concerns among Democrats and some outside observers. Democrats on Capitol Hill have expressed deep concern over Musk's Starlink company and efforts underway that might allow it, in some way or another, to take over a $2.4 billion contract between the FAA and Verizon. Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat, wrote that the potential deal, which isn't been signed or anything yet, it's just potential, quote, reeks of the most corrupt, self-serving abuses that federal procurement laws and principles are intended to prevent. Again, that's a quote. I want to bring in Politico aviation reporter Oriana Pawlyk. Oriana, help our audience catch up on this. They may not have seen all of your great reporting or the reporting of others. You have the FAA, you have Verizon, and Starlink. What is the status of their relationship and this potential contract?
So a couple of days ago, Elon Musk had been talking about very publicly on his social media platform X that there is a problem with the current contract as it stands. And he had been falsely blaming Verizon, saying that they cannot do the infrastructure work that it takes. But really, he backtracked later and said, actually, I falsely accused the wrong contractor. It's L3Harris that has the current system. But he, of course, offered a very quick solution, and that solution is his very own company, Starlink, to do a satellite-based infrastructure upgrade. And so ultimately, it hangs in the balance of what the FAA is going to decide next, whether or not Verizon will be kicked off this, again, as you mentioned, $2.4 billion contract, which is already in the works. It was awarded in 2023, and whether or not Starlink will come in and have this, quote, quick fix as he's so far proposing.
And if I've read Verizon's assessment of this, they're saying the systems that they put together are being tested and prepared. They don't seem to be backing away from this at all. They want to keep what they've got contracted. Is that correct?
Yeah, so far, Verizon is saying that they haven't heard otherwise from the FAA, that so far everything is proceeding as planned. Again, they won this contract back in 2023 in a competitive bidding process. So for another company to just have eminent domain and come in and take over on something like this would ultimately open up the entire thing to lawsuits. As you've pointed out, Democrats on Capitol Hill are very concerned about all of this. It raises many questions on how this could upend a lot of protocols that are already in place. And again, what the FAA is going to decide to do with that going forward.
And you said a key phrase there, Oriana, competitive bid process. It's not just preferred, it's federal law. There has to be a process, has to be evaluated, and those who have won contracts, whether it's with the FAA or anyone else, have rights. And if Musk does succeed at some level of stepping in, as you mentioned, he'll be taken to court.
I'm sure that would happen. And again, I think that some contractors are open to having Starlink be complementary. It's not like they're pushing back and saying Starlink isn't the solution here. It may be a complementary system to what Verizon is already doing. But again, that's a question for the FAA and what the FAA wants to do as it looks to overhaul all these systems that Musk has now, kind of put his foot in the door into, now looking forward and saying, I can do this better.
And Oriana, what is your understanding of the principal needs at the FAA? Is it air traffic controllers? Is it a new system? Is the system, and I know Elon Musk misidentified what the problem was in the contractor, but he said some very dire and scary things about the system and its possible shutting down. I mean, is it that fragile?
I mean, there are things that, moving from one system to the next has taken years, and even lawmakers have criticized how slow it has been to upgrade and modernize a lot of these systems because they are so old and outdated. What he's talking about in terms of these catastrophic losses that could happen any day now is to be determined. The FAA has not put out any kind of assessment on what he means exactly, and whether or not that's in Verizon's camp, whether or not that's in L3Harris's camp. But there are multiple things going on here on the system itself, which is stretched thin and does need modernization and upgrading, as well as the controllers every day who use them themselves, and the shortage there on staff and just how stressed out they are. So multiple things happening at the same time.
Oriana, real quickly, does SpaceX have anything to do with this story? It's another Musk-owned company.
Sure. I mean, they have been fined by the FAA. They were fined last year about $633,000 because they deviated from launch plans. And Musk was very vocal about that and how upset he was that they took a laser focus on his company for no reason. He said he adhered to safety protocols and that they fixed it. Of course, at the time, FAA Administrator Mike Whitaker disagreed, and their launch plans were shuttled for a bit until they resolved that, as well as other things going on with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So he does have an out, I should say, for the FAA and all of the things that have gone on with that agency and between him.
An axe to grind and a pending contract. All very interesting. Oriana Pawlyk with Politico. Thanks so much.